So today we're talking about two things: leveraging Section 8 tenants. As a part of the buy hold series, you have different tenants that you could kind of target your target demographic. And Dr. Joe has gone through phases and cycles of real estate, which will be helpful as we're going through a current cycle. And how buy hold is kind of a test of time, and how he got to his strategy. Not saying it has to be your strategy, but this is a strategy. And so he's going to talk about that and how he kind of fell into his niche. And then we have Seth Offer. Thank you for joining, Seth. He's going to be talking about rates, and specifically the ARM product, which is an adjustable rate mortgage. And it's just blowing our mind that we're not talking about it more, and why investors should be talking about it. Anything I missed, Carlos, before getting into it?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we get to talk a little bit about also just the fundamentals of buy and hold in general, since this is the buy and hold series. What is the mentality of a buy and hold investor? If you understand what you should be looking for as a buy and hold person, then a lot Dr. Joe shares with us tonight will be more moving. You don't really understand exactly what a buy and hold investor is really after. Some of the amazing aspects of his model may sound interesting to you, but that they may not really reach your soul. So hopefully we can talk about what it is that a buy and hold investor, especially around here, wants. I think it's a little different around here in the Mid-Atlantic and in this high cost area of Washington, D.C. versus, say, the Rust Belt, And if you know a little bit about buy and hold, and if you know a little bit about what's not so great or what is so great around here about the way you can do buy and hold, then you'll hear Dr. Joe and you'll be like, wow, that is a really, really interesting way to do it. So won't try to give away what those themes are, but definitely he's got a way to do it where some of the downside of being a landlord, because there's no free lunch, there's work involved, gets mitigated or minimized or smoothed over by Dr. Joe's approach. So hopefully there's opportunities for Joe to talk about that. Nick, you, maybe me, any member of this group today. I know Jad's always willing to throw in his 2 cents, so we can really talk about what are you really trying to do when you're a buy and hold investor? What is it exactly? People here invest. I heard my client asking me these questions today, and I realized, I had to slow down. So I was talking about, an investor might buy this property. And he heard certain kinds of investors. There's lots of different kinds of investors. We buy and hold people, we have a particular mindset and set of goals. And Dr. Joe, he's tried a lot of different buy and hold methods. And I think he's obviously, it's goes without saying, he's uncovered a great one and developed it for other people. Maybe he can also tell us a little bit about how he teaches what he does, not just what he does, but how you could maybe sign up to learn more about it if you want to do that. And really do some case studies with him. So, I mean, honestly, I've been a buy and hold investor since 97, and a lot of what Dr. Joe has shared that I've learned only in the last couple years has really changed my thinking. So, I thought I'd seen a lot, but I hadn't quite heard anybody know their MO, their modus operandi, define it, redefine it, and help other people target it as well. So he's very purposeful, Dr. Joe. He's not stumbling into his method. He's really, like nobody, very purposeful, which is really great because it's clear to understand what it is you're trying to do when you work with Dr.
Joe. Dr. Joe's shaking his head.
My head's getting bigger,
See the smoke.
Yeah, hopefully I fit on the screen,
Dr. Joe's not going to disappoint. He starts off all modest, and he gets filled. Well, really quickly before we transition into the meat of this meeting, Nick and I lead a real estate sales team and Garcia Properties. I see Cindy. I think Jasmine may be joining. I don't know if she joined already. She's also on our team. We're agents who love
David and Lewin.
Oh, is David there? Oh, sweet. Hey, David. We are realtors who love the real estate. We don't just peddle it. We don't just sell it. We closed 120 million last year, which was the 9th straight year that we did 120 million. And hopefully this year will be our 10th. We're pacing to do. Sorry, the 9th straight year we've done 100. Hopefully this year we'll do it again. And very importantly, Nick and I, this webinar series, which hopefully will be in person again soon, is not exclusively about buy and hold, but Nick and I are the most in our element when we're talking about buy and hold, because that's what we love to do. They're flippers, they're developers, they're all sorts of investors, and we love buy and hold because that's who we are. So we do tend to represent clients who are buy and hold clients. We also represent flippers and developers. Don't get me wrong, but we fancy ourselves to be buy and hold people. So this is who we are.
Yeah, we're excited. So let's go ahead and get started. The focus of Grid is building wealth through real estate. It's one of the biggest asset classes. As you can imagine, a lot of people own houses, and it's relatable, but it's also the majority of wealth in the United States is in real estate, commercial, residential, and so forth. So the point of Grid is to grow, return, invest, and develop. Grow your database, return on your relationships, invest in people, invest in assets, and develop leadership and expertise. So that is what Grid is here for. We're here with you. We're here to do deals with you and amongst you. So sharing information, we like to be very open and we like interaction. So feel free to ask questions or promote yourself, your Instagram handle or your email, what you're looking for in the chat function. And with that, I guess we could do a little networking. If I'm not going to pick on anyone, but if anybody wanted to just say maybe who they are and what they're looking for, and just to get it started, and then drop your information. So I'll leave it up to you guys. I see some people in the crowd, so I might have to pick you out if no one goes. Erica?
Thanks, Nick. Good to see you. Hi, everyone. Erica Simmons, DC Northwest, hanging out in the apartment Nick helped me purchase not too long ago. I'm here because I've always been curious about investing in real estate, and I'm working on developing the courage to jump in and the baseline knowledge that's going to help me gain that courage. So looking forward to learning from our presenters, but also from this community of folks. Nice to see y'all.
Love that Nelson lamp in the background.
What'd you call it?
Nelson lamp, the white lamp hanging over.
Oh, that's what it's called? See, now I already learned something.
In fact, you see, I've got a spare one behind me.
Okay.
Same design.
Look at that.
Oh, sorry.
Nice.
It's a similar design. Maybe not the exact same shape. Yeah.
Excellent. Came with the place.
Nick, I can go if no one else wants to go. Okay. My name's Janine or Cassandra, whichever one you choose. I am a former student of Dr. Joe's. I've attended his JV session, which was awesome. So if you haven't attended that, you should reach out to him and take a stab at it. It's lots of excellent information. And as a result of that, my interest has been piqued in real estate. And so Dr. Joe will be proud of me. I have moved away from the paralysis stage of analysis. And tomorrow I will be attending my first briefing with the Housing Authority in PG County to get some information. I've talked to hard money lender today to get the basics. So I'm getting that ball rolling. So Erica, don't be too scared. Step out there, do what you got to do. It does take a while sometimes, but I was very interested once I found out about Dr. Joe through Bigger Pockets and his model, and I kind of wanted to try to replicate that in the Maryland area. So I've got my 2 zip codes picked out that I really want to focus in on. I've been looking at houses and running numbers and seeing, what makes sense. And so I'm getting closer. So thank you, Dr. Joe, for the Wealth Wednesday inspirations. And thank you, Ms. Pam, for prodding me about a month or so ago. So I'm getting there. So happy to be here today. Thank you, Nick, for sending the invitation. It's always good to be able to hear Dr. Joe share information. And that's all I got.
Nicholas, did you call on me yet or no? I just want to say what a pleasure it is to have Dr. Joe on. I've been going to meetups since like 2013, and Dr. Joe used to go to is it Andre's next to National Harbor? And Dr. Joe would go in the front of at the end of the thing, at the front of the class, there would be like 200 people there. And you're like, if you don't know what to do with your deal, sell it to me. I'll take it off your hands. He goes, I buy DC, whatever you guys have, I'm here. And I was like, man, to have that type of confidence, 200 people in the room and you're like, sell me everything you have. So, so Dr. Joe's definitely been an inspiration. Dr. Joe, I'm up to about 110 units with my brother and I, and 90% is voucher tenants.
Wow.
Just because it's just been easier. And we've also expanded now into commercial multi-unit buildings. And we do flipping a lot too, just because flipping pays for a lot of the rentals, because the rentals are kind of short-term gains. So I'm really excited that you're presenting today, Dr. Joe. I'm excited. And thank you, Nicholas and Carlos, for hosting.
I see Marcus here. Shout out to Marcus. I know Marcus got a good rental going with a similar strategy.
If you don't want to introduce yourself, okay. But please, Heather, go ahead and do that. But then also another thing people can do is just let us know if there's something specific you want to make sure that we touch upon today. That's another way you could introduce yourself.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I wanted to come and introduce myself. My name is Heather Phillips. I am a realtor as well as an investor, specifically in Baltimore City. I invest in the 21213, 21239 in the Fells Point region currently, but I'm really interested on learning about new commercial developments, commercial opportunities. I'm looking into getting some multi-units and expanding my portfolio within the Prince George's and Washington, D.C. area. So thank you so much for sending me the invite. I'm excited for this discussion.
Carlos, the seasons are changing. Like we've been doing this every month. So I feel like every time we do it, it was always dark, like, in that room. And now look, springtime's upon us. The sun is out. You're tanned and happy. Right, Nicholas? Right? Every month we do this thing. It's always like super dark in his basement. And he has the recessed lights on.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't comment. I got it. I'm here in the
Yeah,
office.
today he has a fresh haircut. Someone's selling some real estate.
Yeah, or not.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Raj. And I'm in Virginia. I'm looking for a good mentor to have like few rentals, but I'm trying to scale up. So I'm looking for a good mentor for me to scale up with some flips and also expand into more rentals. So I think, yeah. So Dr. Joe maybe would be able to help, or any others. I think I would be interested in talking to them.
Let me ask a question. Are you, Raj, interested in real estate investing so that you can make more money in the year you invest? So that's like, you know, are you trying to increase your earnings? Or are you trying to grow your wealth? Like, you know, a decade, 2 or 3 later, you'll be like materially more wealthy than you would have been if you had not done the investment. You know,
I'm looking at both the options. I really like the long-term wealth creation of the rental properties, but to be able to scale that up, I really like struggle to finance those, you know. So I think flips probably would provide some financing assistance towards the rental game. So that's what I'm thinking. So that's what, yeah, you know.
do you have a current source of income outside of the real estate
Yeah,
investment?
I do have a W-2 job.
Mhm.
Yeah, make
Is that-
decent money, but I think, you know, job only provides so much, right? So I really see there's a value in rentals, especially if you hold on for a long time. It creates real good wealth. So that's what I'm interested in. But also, it flips provide some like push up in doing scaling up. So that's what I'm also looking at flips.
Tell you why I asked that question, because I did want to know your answer, but then having other people listen to your answer, hopefully they think about themselves and they think, you know, what's their purpose as an investor? And a lot of us want something that can get at both things. And actually, Dr. Joe is very good at that. But it's also good to know, if you have to choose one, what is it that you're really after? What's really driving the exercise? You know, wealth building or income generating? Sometimes I think to myself, if I really wanted to make a lot of income, what I would do is I'd go get like a fleet of cars on what's it, Turo. You know what I mean? Buy those depreciating assets, not too much for each one, and just get a lot of money off of each car right now, next month. But I don't think that would make me wealthy. But it'd make me more money this year. I always like to understand. In my particular case, I've had to make the choice. I think Dr. Joe's been better about being able to get both. But that's something I really, really hope everyone understands about him or herself, is what's your highest monetary goal? You know, the wealth building or the income generating.
That's great. And I like about Dr. just to kind of intertwine the two. Dr. Joe, I like his course because he intertwines the both. He's like, well, why not leverage other people, invest, you know, get investors, almost like you're a startup, you're an entrepreneur. You look at community source funding, you know, community engagement. So you're trying to get these sources from somewhere else so you don't have to spend 3 to 6 months. And Jad will tell you maybe it's a little bit easier or harder than it looks. It's not as easy as it looks to flip a house, and Dr. Joe could comment. So what I like about his course is he tells ask your friends, you know, you'll be surprised who would invest.
Hi, my name is Tracy Mitchell, and I'm here with my husband, Mike. I used to run a retail store for 7 years. I closed it in December. And I'm now in this transformation period where I want to work smarter rather than harder. And I want to see how I can leverage my company to get into the wealth building and income generating with real estate. I do have my company. I'm not making any income right now, but my husband is. He has a W-2 as well as military. So he has a couple of streams of income. And we're in the Maryland area, right outside of Washington D.C. We're in Prince George's County, and we do have a current townhouse that we're using the housing voucher program with.
You know what's interesting, Nicholas and Dr. Joe and everyone on this call? Like, here's this young lady who just closed down her clothing store, and she's like, okay, I get started. But like, it must be so overwhelming for her to start in this game, you know? Like, okay, how do you identify a property? How do you submit an offer quickly? Do I work with a realtor? Do I become a realtor? Once I get the house under contract, how am I going to finance it? Once I finance it, am I going to fix it up? Where do I find the contractor? Like, it must be so overwhelming for beginners or people that are shifting into this industry. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Joe and Nicholas?
Let me chime in on that one. It's a good point. I mean, what I've learned is that the best way to get into real estate investing is to do a deal yourself. I mean, there's just so much that you learn just by pulling the trigger and making it happen. Now, not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the means or the ability to start today. Short of that, in my opinion, the next best way is to look over the shoulders of somebody who's successfully doing what it is that you want to do. And you kind of look over their shoulders and see how they execute. And therefore you see, step by step, you see the trials and tribulation, what works, what doesn't work. You kind of understand the systems. You kind of, see, how this thing is able to how do you sort of start from here and get to where you ultimately want to be by looking over the shoulder of somebody who's more seasoned, more experienced, and hopefully somebody who's more knowledgeable than you. And it gives you the confidence to say, okay, I think I can do this. And therefore, you can leverage on somebody else's mistakes. So that way you don't have to make the same mistakes yourself. Because there's really no reason to recreate the wheel. I'm not the first person, Nick's not the first person, Seth's not the first person to do this. But if you don't sort of have those experiences that they have behind you, then you're probably going to make a lot of what I call unnecessary mistakes. So I think that one of the best way, I think, is to find people who are successfully doing what it is that you're trying to do. And therefore you leverage, somehow incentivize them to show you such that you can get to where you need to go to a lot faster than trying to figure it out yourself. There's a saying goes, a wise man learns from his mistakes, but a genius learns from other people's mistakes. So, we don't have the time to learn from our mistakes. We'd rather not make those mistakes. At least I wouldn't anyway. And therefore we can get to become geniuses a lot faster than just sort of learning from the school of hard knocks.
That's a great point, Dr. Joe. That's something that I unfortunately had to go through the school of hard knocks and learn to put my pride aside a lot of times. I think a lot of us think, oh, we're smart enough, we'll figure it out, and don't always reach out for help when needed. And just, I love, the ability to create these networks so that we can reach out to each other when needed and often, so that it's part of everyday conversation. Whether or not that's like finding a contractor or who's a good realtor. My first deal, I went through 4 contractors and extended my budget to a point that really pigeonholed me. And if only I kind of asked for help, it would have made a big difference. So I appreciate that advice.
Yeah, it's not pretty when you make mistakes and you get beaten up a couple of times. It's not pretty. I mean, you feel like, oh, it's not pretty. It's just like going through a real estate downturn. I mean, I'll get to that in a second. I mean, I've been through 4 of these cycles, and what I've learned is that you don't want to be the guy standing up when the music stops. It's not pretty, and there are ways to avoid being the guy standing or the girl standing up when the music stops. There's people who have been there and have learned from that, and therefore they do things differently, such that there are signs, and hopefully you can avoid the mistakes that other people have made, and you can leverage on systems and relationships and networks that other people have rather than trying to create it yourself.
When the music stops, can't you just keep dancing?
Yeah, you could keep dancing all the way to bankruptcy if you want. Yeah.
To the court. To the court. To the town.
It's all the way to the bankruptcy court.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. That thing about learning from other people's mistakes. That's good. That's good. I mean, you know,
A lot of people.
you learn things really well when you learn them from your own mistakes. Like when the mom says to the kid, "Don't touch that, it's hot." The kid touches it and he says, "Why didn't you tell me it was that hot?" Because I told you it was hot. Then you remember when you felt it. But it is amazing how some people do have the ability to learn from people like you, Joe, and skip through that, or at least, avoid a good bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, we're all not getting any younger, apart from Nick, But we don't have time to waste. We just need to get to where we need to go through the straight line rather than going through zigzag all over the place. That's my take, anyway. Life's too short.
I mean, yeah, there's some humbleness to it, right? Right.
Yeah.
With me older, wiser, I want to do it myself. People say, I want to learn. I want to, fail forward. Right. Feels good to be alive.
Right. Yeah. Until.
Well, so this can venture into the philosophical, but what I do hope some of what can happen is that you can stop if you think you hear something that Dr. Joe is sharing, where he's enabling you to learn from his mistakes or other people's mistakes that he learned from, perhaps without having to experience them. But how does a person do that? I think there needs to be recognition of what's significant that's being said. I will do my best to chime in a little bit without talking too much on a couple of the things that I know that when I hear Joe say them, they hit me to my core because I know what he's talking about. I'll try to chime in on a couple of those because the first time I heard Joe present, you got to understand, I'm a grizzled veteran already when I first hear him present, and I was excited like a school kid. I was so jazzed by what he had to share because I recognized the significance of it because I've got some bumps and bruises, some scars to show. I have learned through the School of Hard Knocks. I've also tried to sit at the knee of people and accelerate that. But I'll try to chime in on a couple of the things that Joe's going to share. That was just a disclaimer, that big page of legalese. Basically, like no one here is like on the meter providing professional advice, like in a way that you can rely on like a lawyer's or an accountant's opinion. Basically, that's what that's saying. This is just a group of people sharing concepts. No one is actually doing their consulting work here. That's the disclaimer, fundamentally. And without further adu, Dr.
Joe, the man, the myth, the legend. Dr. Joe, 30 plus years of investing. He was blue collar or white collar worker, 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and he got the real estate tick. And he's been flourishing ever since. He's got a JV class and he's got multiple courses. He does consulting, investing, coaching, training. He was interviewed twice by the Bigger Pockets, Shark Tank, Barbara Corcoran. Had a nice talk with him. So well-renowned. We're very appreciative to have him on. And I'll let him start here talking about buy, hold investment strategy.
Okay. Nick, so you'll be controlling, Nick, is that correct?
Sure, you just let me know when to hit next or back, or if you don't want to skip.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks, Nick and Carlos, and for the opportunity, for inviting me to speak today. And for those people who don't know who I am, my name is Joe Asamoah. I was originally from Ghana, and I moved to England. My parents moved to England when I was 5. And then I came to the United States October the 17th, 1985 at 7:30 on TW8 flight 732. Okay, so that's what they call it, a defining moment. I came here and I was working in the DC area. I went on vacation once and came back and found out that my boss had been fired by his job. Not for anything that he did. It was just that there was a reorganization and he was let go. So I met up with him for lunch, and this was a major defining moment in my life. He said to me, Joe, look, I got fired, okay? And this could just as well happen to you. And so make sure you have a plan B. In my plan B, that's what he told me, was that he had these rental properties. At the time, he had like 10 houses, which I couldn't figure out how anybody could get more than one. But this guy had 10, which was just, I couldn't comprehend. Anyway, he just said to me, look, Joe, get into real estate. If you do, make sure you hold on to your properties. Don't sell them, okay? Because you'll get residual income like what I have, and I'm okay. So I'm fine, but make sure that you get into this real estate stuff. And if you do, hold on to the properties, don't sell them. So that essentially was a conversation that was the genesis of my journey to real estate. And without boring with the details, I bought my first house shortly thereafter, and I didn't know anything. So you guys know probably 1,000 times more than what I do. When I bought my first home, I knew nothing. I met some guy. He said he had a house. There were some tenants in there. He said the tenants were great. I bought the house based on his word. And after I bought the house, I found out that he hadn't paid him, or the tenants hadn't paid him for 3 months. And it was just a disaster from there onwards. So essentially, the tenants didn't pay me for 6 months on my first deal. And my first purchase, and I just didn't know what to do. I was confused. I said, what did I do to deserve this? And I was going to throw in the towel, but I stuck with it because based on what that guy told me, whatever you do, don't sell your houses, keep them. So I was able to, miraculously somehow turn that thing around, and I learned everything about what not to do. And then I bought my next house. And kept on going until 2003. In fact, it was June the 6th that my job, I was working for a large, Fortune 500 company here in the DC area. I'll give you a clue. The first letter begins with I, and then the last letter begins with M. I won't tell you what the middle letter is, but it was that company I worked for. And so my salary there equaled my rental income at my job. And I was able to transition from being a corporate employee to a full-time real estate investor. So since 2006, I was able to hit that milestone where I generated, if not all my income from rental passive streams. So I say that not to brag or anything, because that's not the purpose. I say that because I've made all the mistakes that you can think of. I've been through 4 real estate cycles. And, despite what people say, and I think I said that earlier on, you do not want to be on the guy standing up when the music stops. It is not pretty, okay? It is ugly. People lose their shirts. People get into bankruptcy. And, the market can't save you. Everybody, it's easy. I won't say it's easy, but it seems easy in good times. You're thinking you're a genius. You think you know it all, because the market is kind of lifting all boats. But when the market stops or slows down or the tide goes out, that's when you really realize what you do and what you don't know, and the systems that you have, if it's sustainable and if it can pass the test of time. And so what I'm going to talk about today is buy and hold, which is what I do. I buy houses, I fix them up, I force equity or force appreciation by making improvements, and I keep my properties for the most part. I have done flips. There's a lot of value in flips, but I now hold on to most of my homes. Most of my properties are in the Washington D.C. area. That's Washington D.C., where the bulk of the portfolio is, and then I have stuff in Montgomery County and also in Prince George's County. They're all single families. I don't do multifamily. And I have criteria which I can share a bit later on. But real estate, if I go to the next slide, Nick, you know, the one before that, there you go. The first house I bought was in Columbia Heights, Northwest, okay? And I bought that thing for $47,000. And when I bought that house, people were telling me I was paying too much. I was getting ripped off. I was getting duped, okay? Why in the world do you want to buy in Columbia Heights for $47,000? You're crazy. Nobody wants to buy over there, and so on, okay? And now, you know, we're talking $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million, okay? And I still own that house. The point is that in the DC area, we're in an appreciating market. So over time, and it's the same thing in most capital cities around the world. It's the same dynamics. The capital city, capital area, you know, it's the seat of power. It's where the money is. Land is very restricted. Over time, you know, it's a very strong local economy. So people want to go there for jobs. So the economies tend to be a lot more resilient than most other places. So if you can somehow figure a way to own assets in the capital cities or capital regions in most countries in the world, they tend to pay off. And so the point is that it's always expensive. It's always expensive. It's expensive. When I bought that first house for $47,000, it was expensive 10 years ago when it was, you know, $300,000. It's expensive today. Now it's $800,000. I can tell you this, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, it's just the same thing. 10 years from now, you'll be wishing you bought in 2022 when it was, quote, cheap. You know, you're going to have to believe me on that one. So, you know, so the issue is, how do you get in and how do you leverage the power of real estate? And that's where compounding comes in. It's that, you know, you let time work for you. You know, real estate in the capital. Now, it's not the same everywhere in the country, you know, but it's pretty the same in the capital regions in most places in the world. So you just let time take its, you let time work for you. And, you know, you buy it, you hold it, and then, you know, over time, it'll appreciate in value. And you're going to build wealth, which means that, you know, you're going to start having, you know, sort of equity. And if you have equity, then there's several things that you can do with that equity, which I'll explain for. I mean, it looks good on a piece of paper, but also you can pull that equity or tap into that equity to build more wealth, to build more, to buy more assets. And so therefore, so for the example of the house that the first house I bought, I was able to get what we call a HELOC. And through that, I've been able to buy more houses from that one asset. If you follow me, the rent when I bought that house, the cash flow was $50. $50. I want to repeat that. I was making $50. I was getting tenants from hell. And after all is said and done, I was making $50. Anybody in their right mind would say, why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. But now that same house, the rent is $4,700 and so on. So you just let time work its way, and it does tend to work for you. But the big but, though, is that you're going to have to hold it, which means you're going to have to deal with tenants. And that's the part that scares a lot of people. Is this whole idea of tenants. What do I do with tenants? How do I, you know, avoid getting tenants from hell? How do I have systems in place where if something goes wrong, I can fix it and still keep on going? And I'll share some of those things a bit later on. But the point is that you can build wealth by holding on to properties, and flipping is good, but holding on to properties clearly is a better strategy, in my opinion. Can I go on to the next slide, Nick? So with the buy and hold model, you can really leverage the true power of real estate, in my opinion, and that is the cash flow, which is the, you know, after all is said and done, the delta between what's coming in minus all the expenses that go out. So, for example, the house of which you know, the one I just explained to you, you have a debt, you have expenses that go out, you've got, you know, a debt to pay, insurance, taxes, you've got repairs to do. But after all is said and done, you know, there's a positive which will generate cash flow. Now, right now, obviously, depending on how much you pay, you may not get that much cash flow, but over time, it does build if you increase the rents, if you get the right financing in place, and so forth. So you can get income from your property, and that was how I was able to get through my job. Leverage is that, you know, you can buy this one house, and for a lot less, like, I mean, Seth is going to talk about that today, is that you don't have to put in 100,000. If a house is worth 100,000, you may be able to buy it, put 10 or 20,000 in and leverage the other 90 or 80,000. So you can use the power of leverage to acquire these properties. Obviously, there are tax benefits, and in this market, there's the appreciation, and over time, you do get equity buildup. So the important thing I want to say from here is that there's a scenario of the golden goose lays the golden eggs. Okay, I think we all know that story. In real estate terms, the golden goose is the asset, the real estate, and it lays golden eggs, which are tax benefits, cash flow, appreciation, equity buildup, and so forth. So they're the golden eggs which emanate from this golden goose. The problem with the short-term strategies is that, like fix and flip and wholesaling and things like that, is that you are essentially giving away the golden goose to somebody else. So somebody else is going to have the golden eggs, which is the cash flow, tax benefits, and so forth. So if you're able to hold on to that asset, and then you start buying more of assets, then you have lots of golden geese, correct? Golden gooses, geeses. Okay, I was getting wrong, yeah. But you have, so you have many. You have more. Pardon?
You have a flock of geese.
Okay, so you have a flock of geese which laid all these golden eggs from these flock of geese, and so on. And that's how you're able to sort of grow your portfolio, grow your wealth building, and so on. Is that you have all these golden eggs that's being laid, and over time, it you know, initially it feels like it's a slow motion train, but believe me, over time it does work for you. And I can remember, I'll interject some stories every now and then, you know, during my presentation. I remember in the mid-90s, I could have bought a house in Logan Circle. I think most people know where Logan Circle is. You know, for $126,000. Okay, $126,000. Okay, for a house in Logan Circle. I offered the seller $120,000. So we were haggling over $6,000. Okay, can you believe that? We're haggling. They wanted $126,000. I offered them $120,000, and I said no deal. You know, I didn't want to pay too much for Logan Circle, $120,000. So you know, I didn't buy it because of $6,000. And you know, fast forward to today, you know, what, $1.5–2 million for that same house. And
how many square feet? How many square feet?
It's one of those 4-level houses. It's on Corcoran Street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
$1,300 on Corcoran Street.
It's $3 million.
Yeah.
Okay, don't rub it in either.
He's a fierce negotiator, that Dr. Joe.
Yeah. So, but I learned. I refuse to go on that street anymore. It's too scary. It's too depressing. You know. So let time work for you. I think that's the point I'm trying to make here. Is that, you know, if you know what you're doing, and I'll explain what knowing what you're doing means in a few seconds. But it's okay. You can pay a little bit over. I mean, if I paid $130,000 for that house, I mean, it's irrelevant, you know, today's terms. So sometimes it's okay to pay market rent, market value for the home, as long as you kind of take a long-term perspective, and so on. So let's go to the next slide, please.
Joe, how much time are we talking about when you say long-term? Can you put a little bit of a scale on that?
Yes, I mean, I've been doing this for 37 years now. So it could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I mean, it's, you know, it's whatever length of time that you have. Okay.
That's
it's
helpful.
just fine. I'm sorry.
That's helpful though. 5, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah. 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It just depends on you. Now, the thing is that you're going to have challenges, which is what this slide talks about. You're going to have challenges associated with a tenant management. What I mean by that is that you're going to have to deal with tenants. Either you're going to give it to a management company to manage it on your behalf, or you're going to have to manage yourself. I manage my properties myself. I have over 30 houses in the DC area, with the vast majority in Washington D.C. I manage all my properties myself. You know, it's okay. It's not as bad as what people think it is. And so the key is, okay, thank you. So, you know, how do you keep your sanity by working with tenants? How do you do that? And what I learned the hard way
Please
is,
let us know.
right. So what I kind of stumbled upon is this whole concept of it, what I call a tier 1 tenant. A tier 1 tenant is a tenant that's going to pay you the rent. A tier 1 tenant is going to take care of your property. A tier 1 tenant is going to be pleasant to deal with. And a tier 1 tenant is somebody that's going to stay a long time. Stay a long time is the key, okay? Because the cost of the turnover, I think most landlords understand this, is the turnover cost is the killer cost. Most people, I mean, we make our profits 2 ways, either by increasing the income or by reducing the expenses. Most of us tend to focus on the increase in the income side. How can we increase the rent by $10, $20, $30 or whatever it is? When in reality, you really don't have that much say over that, because that's the market determines that. You have the biggest say in terms of reducing your expenses, and the biggest expense cost is turnover. Turnover is when somebody leaves the house. You got to paint it again, you got to clean it again, you got to advertise again, you got to look for new people, you got to go through a whole time-consuming cycle. And a typical turnover will run you about 2 to 3 months lost income. So if you're rented, let's just keep it simple, $2,000. Every time somebody leaves, it's going to run you, after all is said and done, around between $2,000 to $6,000. Okay, is lost every time there's a turnover. So if you can't manage that, and I mean by that is that you've got a vacancy, you know, so you're going to lose rent for at least for a month. Then you got some repairs that's going to need to be taken place, and you've got some upgrades that may be necessary, and you got your time, and it's just a very expensive process. So what I did was to understand that the key to my success is to figure out a way where I can get tenants who stay a long time. And that's when I kind of stumbled upon this whole concept of Section 8. Now, I know when I say Section 8, you're probably going to say, you know, horror and, you know, I don't know, chaos, drama, trash your house. I get it. But there's a group of people who don't fall that, don't fall into that category. These are really good people, and who are looking for an opportunity to live in a nice house in a nice area. But the other thing is that once you understand the Section 8 program, and I don't want this discussion to be about Section 8, but I just want to, it's still the whole buy and hold. But once you understand how the Section 8 program works, it works based on 2 things. Your rent is based on 2 things, which is, number one, is based on the location of the zip code or the neighborhood of your property. And the second thing is the number of bedrooms. So if you can increase the number of bedrooms for a given property, you can increase the rent. So if I buy a 3-bedroom house, I may get $3,000 in terms of rent. If I add another bedroom, I may get $3,500. If I add a second bedroom to make it 5-bedroom, I may get $4,000, and so on. So I can have a say in terms of the possible rent I'm going to get, and ultimately the cash flow I can get from this asset. So if you can find good tenants, then those tenants are likely to stay a long time because they don't pay most of the rent. Part of that rent is paid by them, and the other bulk of it is paid by the housing authority. But tenant management is the key to my success. And what do I do to do that? I realize that I've got to make sure that my tenants are happy. Success is based on understanding there are 2 main assets here. Asset number 1 is the physical asset, which is the property. And the second asset is the tenant. And, if the tenant is happy, the tenant's going to protect your physical asset. If the tenant's unhappy, the tenant could destroy your physical asset. So screening is the important thing to make sure that you get tenants who are likely to take care of your property. And I go through a very, very thorough screening process, which I don't have enough time to discuss that, but that is going to be the key. It's the whole tenant management relationship, which starts at screening your property. And once the tenant's in the property, then you take care of them such they're happy. Every Mother's Day, we've got Mother's Day in a couple of weeks, for example, I send all my tenants bouquets of flowers for Mother's Day. When it's Christmas, we send all our tenants Christmas presents. If the kids get A's at school, we send them $50 gift certificate for the children. And I know you don't believe this. We give all our tenants free vacations. This is what you do. This is what I do, because I'm trying to take care of my tenants, and therefore they stay a long time. So that's the first thing, is the challenge of the tenants. And I've had the tenants from hell all along, but I've realized that if you screen well, you can get quality tenants who take care of your property, pay the rent, pleasant to deal with, and stay a long time. The next thing is property management. It's the whole idea. Things are going to go wrong with the house. And what do you do when things go wrong? Obviously, we don't want these infamous 3 a.m. toilet calls. I don't like those no more than anybody else. But you have systems in place such that if something goes wrong with the house, then you can get, you can get those taken care of. I have home warranties on all my properties, for example. Then you have a network of handyman.
That's advice. That's
Yeah. So I have home warranties on my properties, and it's not the silver bullet, but it does mean that if something goes wrong with the major systems like electricals, plumbing, heating, appliances and things like that, you can outsource that to the home warranty companies to let them deal with it. So we have systems in place whereby if something goes wrong, then do this. If something goes wrong, you do that, and so forth. Obviously, the home warranty company doesn't cover everything. For the things that they don't cover, then you have your handyman and maintenance people, which will take care of the delta. So, so there's the challenge of the tenants, there's the challenge of the property, and then you have the challenge of the market cycles. When the market tanks, I'll give you a story here. We're in the mid-90s, in Washington. I lived in Columbia Heights at that time. And we moved from Washington, D.C. to Maryland. And it was a downturn. That was the time when people were leaving Washington. If the control ball was in, we had Marion Barry got busted, and everybody was trying to get the hell out of D.C. D.C. was going downhill fast. I don't know if you guys remember that. It wasn't pretty. And that's a cycle. We're in the down, and I had somebody came to my home who was looking for a tenant. Oh, sorry, who was looking to rent my home, a tenant. And this tenant said she didn't want to live in my home. She didn't want to rent my home. Why? Because it didn't have a jacuzzi. Why? Because my home didn't have stainless steel. This is a Section 8 voucher holder. Okay. It didn't have stainless steel appliances. It didn't have all those, latest bells and whistles. What I was seeing at that time, we were going through a depth of a cycle where there was a lot more people who were trying to sell their homes or get rid of their homes, but they couldn't get rid of them, so they had to rent them. So essentially, what was going on was that she had choices. Everybody wanted her. She was a good tenant. She had a good rental history, but she could choose my house or choose somebody else's. I was now competing with a flipper who couldn't sell their home. Okay. So if you own an apartment building, you're now competing with a condo building. So if you're in the market cycle, I think all bets are off. Your competition changes. You can go from a landlord's market to a tenant's market very quickly. You have to do stupid stuff like, I was giving away free toasters for people to apply to my houses. Okay, I was giving free vacations to incentivize people to come to see my homes. Okay, I know it's strange. but all bets are off in a downturn. And but the key is you've got to make sure your tenants stay in your home, because if they stay in your home, they're more likely to you're more likely to get the income, you're more likely to get the rent, and you can weather the storm a lot better than if you have a turnover. Because when you have a turnover, it's ugly. You're gonna compete with lots of other people in order to get your property filled. So I was giving away free toasters, I was giving away free vacations to incentivize people to look into my home. So market cycles can be challenges, and that's the reason why you got to have a systems in place whereby you can keep your tenants for a long time. Okay, let's go to next slide, please. Flips. I've sort of, we kind of do a contrast between buy and hold versus fix and flip. As I said before, I flipped some homes, and it's a good strategy. You can get some quick cash, but over time you spend that money. Over time, you pay, you pay higher taxes, and over time, I've had some serious regrets about some of the flips which I've done. It felt good. I made some quick money, but you spend the money, and then you wonder what happened to that money.
Out to send you a ratified contract.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me.
Okay, I'm sorry. And, so I try to, it's tempting. But for those people who have never done buy and hold before, they're probably saying, well, why would I want to do that if I can get a quick 30, 40, 50K versus $300-400 a month? Okay. It's very, very tempting to say, no, I want to get the quick cash. But if you're disciplined, and I think it was Raj, who said this, if you don't have to depend on your rental income, i.e. you've got other sources of income, then you can at least have the ability to be patient. And if you can do that, then it's okay. So the house that we bought in Kentucky Avenue, for example, which is in Capitol Hill, I bought that thing for $200,000. We flipped it. I made a bit of dollars, but I spent the money. I have nothing to show for it, and I wish I kept it. So, you can do a hybrid of the two, but please, I would strongly suggest that you try to keep onto your homes if as much as possible. I've talked about market tenants versus Section 8. Section 8 is a guaranteed income stream. It's a program which is funded by the federal government, HUD, whereby the large portion of the tenant's rent is paid by the housing authority as opposed to the tenants paying that. I like the Section 8 program. I like that guaranteed income stream, especially during a downturn. If a tenant loses their job, if you have a market tenants, then there's a pretty good chance that the tenant may not be able to pay you the rent. But if you have the voucher holders, then at least a significant portion of the rent is paid for you by the housing authority. Therefore, you have a guaranteed income stream, which is sort of recession proof. And therefore, you can weather the downturn a lot faster. And I find that the Section 8 voucher holders tend to stay a lot longer as well. My longest tenant is 25 years. Okay. Where the rent, I think her rent now is $3,500 a month. So people don't stay 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years when the rent's are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. They just don't. They stay, and then they go off and buy their own home. And therefore you have another turnover. But with a voucher holder, they tend to stay a lot longer. And that's the reason why I prefer that program and tenants who have that sort of ability there. Now, we can debate that all day long. Some people obviously are not pro Section 8. Some people are very anti Section 8. But I think if you can find good quality tenants, i.e. tenants that what I call tier 1 tenants, it's perfect. And and so on. So the house that we just did recently, in fact, I just finished a rehab last week, and I just offered it to a tenant on Saturday. So the rent there is $4,366. This is in Brooklyn, okay, in Northeast D.C. The rent is $4,366. That's the rent that we're going to get, and it was $4,366 I'm offering it to a voucher holder. Her portion of the rent, I think, is going to be in, well, where she is now, she's paying $1,000. So out of that 4,366, she's going to pay 1,000, and the housing authority is going to pay the other delta, the 3,366. So no matter what happens, I'm going to get $3,366 a month guaranteed as long as she's in the house. Good times, bad times, and so forth. And she wants to be there forever. She wants to be there a long time. She's so grateful that I gave her a chance to live in that home. So that's the beauty of the program. If you can find good houses in good areas, you can attract good families who stay a long time. And that's been the key to my success. It's very simple. Buy good houses in good areas and appeal to quality tenants who are going to stay a long time. And that's the formula. You buy a C property in a B neighborhood and you rent to an A tenant. That makes sense? You buy a C property in a B neighborhood and you rent to A tenants. If you can get that, you can get 5, 10, 15, 20-year tenants. You can get assets that you buy today that 5, 10, 15 years from now you still own, and it's probably increased in value a lot. And you can build financial independence, you can build wealth, and you can really leverage the true power of real estate investing. It's a very simple formula. I really don't understand why more people aren't doing it. I do give people the opportunity to see what I do, look over my shoulders, and but the key is screening. Okay, for those people who have properties, you've got to nail down the screening. You've got to nail that, because if you make a mistake there, you get the wrong tenant, then obviously you can have all kinds of problems later on. So the key is going to be screening, and so really, essentially, that's really I could talk all day long. I know we're going to a Q&A session, but the key points I want to make is this: we all can do this. It's a high price market here in the Washington D.C. area. It's okay. 5, 10 years from now, you wish that you bought in 2022. The key is going to be finding tenants who are going to stay and take care of your property, pleasant to deal with, and stay a long time. And there's ways to do that. I know how to do this. I've been through 4 cycles, and I give people the opportunity to look over my shoulders to see how I do it on my projects. I've trained over 600 people on this, and I'm looking forward, really welcome the opportunity to work with you. If you're interested, if there's anything I said that resonates with you, you got the slide before that, Nick?
Yeah, I left your information there, and his and your courses there, and I also actually put a link specifically to the tenant screening 8 p.m. on this Thursday, if that's still going on.
So we have for those people who are interested in tenant screening, we do have a tenant screening course. We just started, and we have a session on Thursday. I'm sorry. It's a really, really great course. And if you want to get into the details of that, I'll also leverage all my systems in terms of my documents. That's where it's going to be. And so press the link. More than welcome to answer any questions that you have. Every Wednesday, I have a Wealth Wednesday. It's free. It's a live stream on Instagram. And there's a handle there at Dr. Joe Asamoah. And I look forward to working with you. It's scary. There's no need to recreate the wheel. A wise man learns from his mistakes. A genius learns from other people's mistakes. So learn from my mistakes, so that way you don't have to make the same mistakes yourself. So with that said and done, if there's any Q&A, let's. We're
going to transition to Seth in the interest of time, talking kind of transitioning. I'm not sure if you could stay around, Dr. Joe, for another 20 minutes. If not, I'll I guess they could send you emails with questions. How are you doing on time, Dr. Joe?
No, I'm fine. I'll stay around.
Okay. All right. So just smooth kind of transitioning to Seth Oppert, one of the top loan officers in the DC area. Now, a lot of you are talking about funds. We were talking about deals and deal finding. And the first part is getting the money. And a lot of people don't know where to start. And Seth is a great advocate for you and your getting this funds, whether it's from 10%, 5% down, and or 15, 20% He's 20 plus years in the business, is a good partner of ours, and works with a lot of our clients. So without further ado, Seth Oppert on ARMs for rental properties and different mortgage instruments.
Hey, everybody. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carlos.
I just wanted to say, if you could assume that there are going to be people in the crowd who who cannot move into a new home and need to buy it purely as an investment with minimum down payments that investors are required. But if you could also assume that there may be some people here who might try to do a Dr. Joe type property, but first live in it for a year so that they can get away with putting less money down. Then also talk about that. You know, you are going to have people who come to these sessions who want to go through the primary residence, you know, opportunity, which is such a special opportunity to put less money down and secure a better rate, in order to fundamentally move out after a little while and convert your home into an investment property. And then there'll be other people like me who are not built for speed. I can't move around as much as I used to. And I'll have to put 20, 25%, whatever you tell me it is. Some of us are also in that category.
Sure, Carlos, we can touch on those. I think I'm probably going to touch on the former first, the people that might want to move into the properties as their primary, just to sort of capture some of the incredibly aggressive products and things that we have to offer now. But before we go,
I could just mention one more piece of advice as to what to tell us. Just because it's so unusual, even though it's not really on the topic, you might just want to mention your bridge loan.
Sure, we can definitely also touch on that. The first thing I want to, you can go to the next slide, Nick, as well. So on the adjustable rate mortgages for rental properties, it's kind of interesting because this is sort of, I guess, an oxymoron of sorts. Like if you're thinking about doing a buy and hold, why would you potentially want an adjustable rate mortgage for a fixed versus a more stable fixed rate mortgage? And it was interesting to hear Dr. Joe and Carlos talk about sort of the life of the loan. And I've been doing this actually for 27 years. And, you know, I've seen more than anybody that people take these 30-year fixed mortgages and then they wind up keeping them for a much shorter amount of time for various reasons. And especially the folks on the grid network that are trying to grow their wealth. We're going to get into what actually happens with a lot of these properties that you think are maybe long-term properties, but you're going to utilize these properties in ways that are going to get you to the next level. And they wind up being much shorter loans. What was that statement that you had, Carlos, that buy and hold are for lifetime properties, but not lifetime loans necessarily? I don't know how you phrased it.
I mean, it could be your forever rental, but it's not your forever loan necessarily, because you may need to refinance it later to pull money out to buy another property.
That's right. Forever rent, not your forever loan. And a lot of times that is the case. I'm sure most of you read the real estate section every week in the Post, and if you don't, you should. But even in this past week's weekend's real estate section, I found it very interesting that the quote was that higher rates are increasing borrowers' interest in adjustable rate mortgages. And their share of loan applications this week was 7.4%, which is the highest since 2019. So people are seeing rising rates for 30-year fixed mortgages that are now in the mid fives, for no point loans, and then you're seeing ARM products that are almost a full point lower. And normally the spread on an ARM is maybe 0.5%, but when you're having rising interest rates, you're able to really capture a lot of savings with an ARM that will get you into the game. And that's really what we are trying to do, is to get all the people that are, fledglings into this also, or even your experienced investors. And I'll tell you some of the powers of the ARMs for these products as well, that are looking to maybe buy bigger size properties, but which we'll touch on. But you're going to be able to get into the market at a very stable low rate, somewhere around 4.5%, which you can lock in for 7 years. A 7-year ARM is one that stays stable for 7 years. And even if you're going to keep the property for maybe 10 years, even if the ARM adjusts for a few years, it's really going to be better by choosing one of these products than maybe a 30-year fix that you're not going to wind up keeping for so long. So that's a good place to start. one of the more exciting things that I have to say, as well, is the First Savings Arms, the company that I work for. It's the largest local lender in DC. They've been around for over 30 years. They're some of the most aggressive, low down payment arms that you can get. And that's a really big deal for folks that are trying to scrap the money together. It's not for, if, as Carlos was saying, if you're looking to potentially buy this property that, this type of, property that we've all been talking about as a primary residence and live in it for a little while, with an ARM, you can put in as little as 3% down. So up to $1 million and $1 million plus loan size, all I need is 3% to get you that 7-year ARM, which is really incredible. And for those people that might want to, that are in a different position, I know we have a lot of different investors on the call. I can go up to a $1.2 million purchase price with only 5% down. And you can't do that on a 30-year fixed mortgage. It's just a jumbo arena that some of you may have been in that have graduated that, want to get to that level that can't. But even the folks that are just trying to start out as well, the minimum purchase price is only $257,000. The maximum loan that I can give you is $250,000. But it's an amazing way to get into the game and to get it in it at a very relatively low price. So even on a $250,000, on a $257,000 deal, a 3% down payment is only $7,700 plus closing costs. And when Nick and Carlos are helping you negotiate some of those, you're going to wind up coming to the table with a really low amount of money to get yourself into a property. And so just before we touch on sort of the other piece of it, which is, let's say you want to buy it as an investment, but, a lot of these properties are going to be stepping stone properties for you. You're going to buy the property, you may do a little work on it, and you may watch the market appreciate, and then you're going to want to cash out. And Dr. Joe is saying he cashed out properties with HELOCs, but you can do cash out refinances. And what happens after that is this ARM loan that I started you out with is you may want to say, hey, I know my now long-term plan is X amount of years, or it's going to be a lot longer. I want to keep the property forever. And that's great too. But you can do that on your cash out refinance, where you're going to take some of that cash from the property to buy your next property. And that's for folks that are buying their first set of properties. If you're like Jad and you have, a ton of properties, you're probably not going to be using this type of financing because, you just have a huge portfolio, but it's for people that are sort of in the game. It's closer to the beginning. If you're going to be buying a property that you want to purely buy as an investment property, well, the market's really changed for that from a residential standpoint. Down payments are 20 to 25%. And that's just a significant chunk. And some of the folks have that, but you're also, going to be dealing with higher rates for those. And you might want to look at ARMs as those as well. You can't do as little as 3% down if you're truly buying it as an investment, but the ARM products are available for investment purchases too. The concept is the same. You don't have to necessarily go with a 6% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. If you're trying to, think about, it's not a forever loan. It may not be a forever property for you. So these are, you have availability for both. And I think that that's really, sort of what I wanted to get into, the crux of what I wanted to get into. And I'm certainly open to talking, other questions that you all may have for Dr. Joe and I that may just sort of cover those. But that's initially. You can scroll through actually, Nick, to see if there's any other. Okay, so associated with more risk, they're not necessarily more risk per se. They're stable loans. They're not going to change. The rates are not going to change on these. The thought of higher interest rates is what we talked about before. The spreads are so significant right now that you're going to really say, wow, the bang for the buck that I have for the ARM. And it's property by property, right? So if you find a place that you just think you're going to keep forever, that's one thing. But you may have a different thought about each different property. And that's where we sort of have the conversation. And we'll look at the cost benefit analysis of a 30-year fixed versus an ARM. But it should be in your conversation right now. It should be something you all are thinking about and not just say, oh, I only need a 30-year fixed rate. Because in a rising rate environment, we want to try to maximize your savings and on the rental every month. Like you're going to get more bang for your buck if your mortgage payment's lower, right, Carlos? Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, it's I think the mentality is shifting now. from that forever loan. You know, we're in a different moment, and so it requires different tactics.
That's right. So I think that's it. I don't think we have. Do we have another screen on the ARMs? Right. So the different ARM choices are 3, 5, 7, and 10. I will tell you that just from a lender standpoint, your best bang for your buck is going to be between a 5 and a 7-year ARM. The 10-year ARM, while you get a nice longer period, is usually pretty close to the 30-year fixed rate. So I think that 7-year ARM is probably going to be, from a longevity, if you're buying and holding, I think that's going to give you a bigger bang for your buck. And then what happens to the ARM afterwards is going to depend on where the market is in 7 years, which we all don't know. I've been through so many cycles. I'm yet to say that, yeah, we think the rates are going to be higher, but how much higher are they going to be? Nobody really knows the answer to that.
I think that the idea is that 5 or 7 years is enough time to find your moment, whether it's because you want to get at the equity in your property and refinance it for that reason, or find your moment to go, secure your next mortgage rate. 5 or 7 years ought to be enough time if you're staying in touch with your loan officer to know when you can go back into the mortgage market to reconfigure the financing on your property.
And look, we weren't supposed to be in this 3-4% interest rate environment for a long period of time, right? And I think it's the reference point that we were spoiled to have such cheap money. And, now we're just going back to ARMs, which is a conversation was a lot more comfortable or a lot more common. Oh, I have an ARM. I have an ARM. You heard it more in lingo, and now it's coming back because this is how it is. Seth, what is the point differential? Where are rates now? What's the market like from a lending perspective? If, let's say, we're looking at a non-jump, not conforming loan to like a jumbo loan, what's the difference? Maybe like a $500,000 property and maybe like an $800,000 property.
Are you looking at are you asking me from an ARM perspective versus a 30-year fixed, or what would you like to know?
Yeah, 30-year fixed versus an ARM, and I just
right. So these were this is just what comes up from the average, but basically you're in the mid to low 5s right now for a 30-year fixed rate with no points for a conventional loan. Obviously, if you're buying a condo where there's some other things, each property is different. This is for more like a single family. I think that if you're going with an ARM loan, I'm just pulling up, pricing from today, you're probably somewhere at around 4.5% or mid 4s, let's say for a 5 or a 7-year ARM. So it's almost a full point differential, which is a big jump. Those jumbo mortgages, the 30-year fixed money on the jumbos are actually a little bit better than the ones that are tied to Fannie Mae, because Fannie Mae is pulling back from the market right now, and there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty and add-ons. So the Fannie Mae rates are actually higher than the jumbo rates. I'd say jumbo rates are probably in the mid to high 4s for 30-year fixed loans. So depending on the size of loan and and what type of property you're bringing me, I'm going to steer you to what I think is going to be the best scenario for you. Does that help, Nick?
Oh yeah. So a 1 point swing is big, and like you said, the loan is not forever. As much as I, a lot of clients come in and out, especially as an investor of loan products. I've refinanced multiple times, and I'm going to need that cash. Kind of like Dr. Joe said, is leveraging the equity in your houses to buy other ones, to refinance debt. So I think I think the ARM product really is in the conversation to stay, and I'm glad we're able to talk about this for investors.
Right. And also for some of those flippers that are out there, a residential lender wants these loans on the books for about 6 months. But usually by the time you buy and you fix up the loan, you'll hopefully have the property for that long. But it also is a really cheap way to, with a low down payment, to be able to get you into these properties. So I know for the folks that are trying to do that as well, as long as the property's habitable, which is a big deal for a residential lender, you're going to be able to utilize these products as well. So they're really for both, I'd say, everybody on the call.
I'm going to bring it back. So awesome content. You know, these two work hand in hand, buying rentals, doing ARMs. Seth has a plethora of products, not only limited to ARMs and conventional 30-year. We're talking about loans based on bridge loans, which are based on your home value, which are very big for people that aren't big on income, right? You own a house, tap into the equity to buy another house. So other products, and then also asset qualifier. If you're not making income, he has an asset qualifier program that based it on your wealth and then stringing that out. So different ideas, lenders, there's a lot out there, but you know, he's the top 1%, and they all have different products. And I think Seth as a correspondent lender offers a ton of great products and services. And from a service standpoint, you know, cost estimates, just general know-how, investor knowledge, Seth is a good go-to.
I have a question. Does anybody want to ask a question or slow this down for a minute and get into some technical aspects of what Joe and Seth have presented? Or I always like the philosophical.
I mean, I think what Seth is really saying is something that's really useful for all of us that are flipping or all of us that are agents. I mean, I don't really do agents full time, but when I list my flips, say in like Maryland, Ellicott City, Bel Air, Maryland. So basically your clients, if they're doing like a 5.25 rate right now, if you put them in this, and then hopefully within the next 2 years, you can refinance to a lower rate, then that would be ideal. I mean, I do a lot of listings, so I've seen they usually give me the lender letter. So I've seen people at 5.25, 4.99. So this may be a better way if it's a lower rate for your client to get in, and then hopefully within 36 months so that way they don't miss out on their dream house. So I think that's why the ARM is really valuable. And they say most people, or the average person before COVID, would spend 7 years in their house, and it's a 10-year ARM. So before it even adjusted, you would have already sold your house. Obviously, those statistics have changed since COVID because people aren't selling as much as they used to. So, but you can still refinance out of it. So that's why ARMs are really important right now.
Yeah,
with the rates going up.
It's a means to an end. Janine, you had a question.
I did. Hi, Seth. Very nice presentation. Thank you so much for that. My question for you is, what are you looking for when you have prospective clients? You know, I've heard a lot about credibility kits and, you know, vision statements and things when you're taking your information to a lender. Like, what can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for perspective, what you're looking what you're looking for from prospective clients?
Sure. You know, the first thing I think that'll help narrow down the conversation is I try to see sort of what availability for your initial down payment is. Then I'm going to target that conversation to your intent for the property. And then we're going to try to look at all avenues to sort of make it so that you can fit into that bucket. So if you're a first time, you know, buyer, I may look at a 0 down program for you. If you're an investment buyer, I'm going to see what your capital is. And once we figure out that down payment, then the rest of the picture is going to come together. Well, how am I going to make this work income wise? Am I going to have to use a stream of asset program? Am I going to have to use your W-2 income? Are you self-employed? And then, so that income and that asset. And then the third piece is obviously your credit. And if your credit's not there, I have programs that will help you get there in 6 months. Credit structure programs. I'm going to say, pay down some of this debt. We'll get your scores up. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. but it's really a three-pronged approach. And that's sort of what I look at as a lender to try to get you to the end zone, to get you the house that you're looking to buy, if that helps.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Seth, this is David. I have a question here. I want to pick up kind of the last thing you said in your speech there about the house has to be habitable, and it's sort of the nexus between where you are and where Dr. Joe is, where you can find a fixer-upper and add instant equity to it by renovating it and then getting a tenant in there. So how habitable does a house have to be for it to be to get a loan from you? I mean,
So
the systems have to work. Do you need flooring?
Yeah, 100%. I got you, David. There are two types of loan products that we offer. One is a bridge loan that Carlos touched on before, that you can actually do the repairs on, and we can get into that. People can certainly contact me on it, so it doesn't necessarily have to be habitable in that sense. Although I think you're going to be competing with a lot of people for those properties that have hard money and that just have all cash, and it becomes a little trickier. But habitable for residential purposes are heat's working. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It can be a house that is old and is not, the walls don't look great, but it has to be no leaks, appliances working, running water, heat. Bare bones habitability. If you think about that, no holes in the roof. It can't have broken windows or open wires or electrical, wires coming out. It has to be basically habitable. And a lot of these properties are. It's the ones that are just totally abandoned that are usually more of the problems. But one of the things I do is you could send me the link, send me the pictures. Carlos and Nick have both done that. And we just say, hey, this one's going to either potentially go or not. We usually can get pictures pretty quick, and we can find out quickly if you can go residential or not.
And Seth, does your program require an appraisal for the bridge loan?
The bridge loan requires no appraisal, actually, and we can close it in 14. No appraisal, and we close it in 14 days. So
I'm excited.
It's a very aggressive program. But
Sorry,
yeah,
I took my kids to Mathnasium. I just got back. I apologize. That's amazing, Seth. Did you hear that, Carlos? 14 days, no appraisal.
He knows.
No wonder you and Nicholas are always so happy.
I've used it, and when you advocate for the client, you explain that it's as good as cash, because all of the homework and the hard work to fundamentally approve this idea, this project, this transaction was done before we ever submitted our offer to you.
So by the time, and how much money down do you need, Seth? If the house is
We've done them with little as zero down, but usually it depends on if the larger jumbos will want a little bit more. But what we're doing, Jad, is we're cross-collateralizing it with one of the other properties that you have that you're going to be basically looking to get rid of. So that's how we sort of protect our equity. And as long as there's 20% equity in one of those properties, that's how essentially the core of the bridge works. It suspends income, it suspends, all the normal things. Obviously, we want you to have good credit and a good profile. And we want you to know that you're going to be able to, get out of the loan quickly, because none of us want it on our books for a long time. You don't, and we don't.
Wow, I'm excited. No wonder Dr. Joe is always so happy. Do you use that program too, Dr. Joe?
Not that one, but yeah, it's important to be able to have deals whereby you can finance it real fast. I mean, it sounds like this is perfect, where you can get into it. Yeah.
14 days.
Within 14 days, no appraisal and no money down.
It's a house loan, Jad. So we're not going through the normal jumps it's a common sense loan.
Yeah, I'm in love. No, because I'm serious, because you guys don't understand, like, if you're trying to do a deal quickly, like they require an appraisal, even if you use hard money like Temple View or I don't want to give the other, but there's a lot of other ones. Just to do an appraisal on a hard money loan sometimes takes up to 21 days.
Right, that's why that's a big piece. You can't close it in that. You have to have no appraisal.
And you have to call the listing agent and say, oh, by the way, I have some random person that wants to go inspect your house and take pictures, even though you told him it was going to be all cash. Right. The fact that you don't have to do an appraisal is a huge, huge advantage.
And at the same time, it is important to know this is for a primary residence. So it's not as much an investor tool.
We have used them for investors too, Carlos.
Boom, Carlos. You see that, Carlos?
Talk to me, Seth. How does that work?
But you
So
have to
it's
use your
the
time.
same concept, but we're still bridging it on a property that will eventually be. So if the equity is there in the property that we're bridging it on, we're okay with them buying an investment property for it, because ultimately it's going to shift over. So we do have some ability to use these for investors, but it is primarily a place to get from folks from one house to the next.
Gotcha. Very cool.
What? So you could use it from one investment property to another as long, and you take
Not a one investment. No, just you know, you can go from a residential to buy an investment property potentially with it. It just depends on the circumstances if you're paying off that existing other loan in full. But yeah, I mean, certainly we can talk about that for anybody that's looking to go from one place to the next.
Super cool.
That's a great product for you.
Super
So I have a question for Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe, for all of us investors, where do you think we should start going for more fruitful opportunities where we're not priced out? Do you like Waldorf? Do you like Annapolis? Do you like Bel Air? Where do you think that we should, because obviously DC is very expensive right now. Where do you think we should be investing our money?
I think yeah, right. I mean, you start where you can afford. So if you can't afford one area, then you look somewhere else, or you look, you kind of see where the path of growth is. So even if you're in Washington D.C., if you're in one area which is too expensive, then you kind of based on history, based on trends, you kind of have an idea where the trend is going. So you may choose the next area which is not so hot, but you buy there.
Dr. Joe, do you buy on the 1% rule, or how do you? Because I buy all my houses on the 1%. If it's 300,000, rents 3,000, 400,000, rents 4,000, etc. That's how I've been able to grow pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what, I mean, again, if you take a long-term view of real estate, you can buy a 0.7, 0.8. I mean, it really, because you're
0.8. Oh, I guess so. Yes, 0.8. Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because you're leveraging, you're going to use time. So it may not be, quote unquote, seem so attractive today, but 5-10 years from now, at least you've got the house and you're going to leverage the power of appreciation. So, yeah, the case in point, the first house I got was $50. That was it. So, I mean, under normal circumstances, I shouldn't have bought that house.
Dr. Joe, you would be proud of me. I bought 4 houses in Stafford in the same month, and I BRR'd them all within 60 days. Actually, no, I'm lying. One of them I had to sell because there was no water. The wholesaler tricked me, and they said they did a well inspection, and the house was completely dry. So I ended up flipping it.
I think, because we can analyze till death, but I mean, I think the important thing is to pull the trigger and get in. And if you get in, the stars may not all align, but at least you're in the game. And then you let time work for you, and then it gives you the confidence to therefore let's go to number 2, and then number 3, and number 4. Otherwise, you won't do anything. And 5 years from now, we'll have the same discussion. Well, I'm going to be getting when all the stars are.
You're right, Dr. Joe.
Nick, could you take the slideshow down so we can see more people on the screen and look at each other for a moment, simulate being in a room a little more closely. Now it's a little easier for me to see who's here. Some people have their cameras turned off. Some people probably are cooking dinner, maybe even eating it. I have a question, because Dr. Joe has talked about letting the element of time work for you. There are some of you here who are investors, and I just don't know that yet. There's some of you here who are investors, and I have a sense of the kind of investor you're like. I know that David Van Leeuwen, I know that Nick, I know that Dr. Joe certainly knows what Dr. Joe is saying and the significance of it when he talks about letting time. Jad, I know, knows this, do a lot for you. Is there anybody here, people who are trying to understand like what he means by that? Can we help anybody here? Because I'm gonna pick out a big gold nugget from what he's sharing with you. But the problem is You may not see that gold nugget. I know, I see how valuable it is. I'm wondering if there's anything I can do to help, if anything we can do to help you understand the power of what Dr. Joe was saying, because it's almost like a religion that some people see and other people are not believers. They don't get it. I'm telling you what each of us long-term buy and hold investors gets to our core. And every day we receive new revelations as to its power, is the power of time, what it's doing for us. Anybody want to delve into that, try to understand that a little better, unpack it?
But not only that, I think what everyone on this call should realize, like right now, my brother and I just had to pay off one of our partners $2.1 million. A lot of commercial real estate, too complicated for this discussion. But what you should know is that all the rentals that we've accumulated, we're able to get credit lines against them. So what Carlos is saying, what Dr. Joe is saying is that once you buy the asset, as you pay it down, you then can get a credit line against the asset. So for instance, a house that's 400, a house that I purchased for 250 is now worth 400, it's paid off. So now I'm getting 3,000 a month from the house. And now I have a credit line of 360,000 from the bank that I can then use to acquire more real estate. I mean, it's the best thing in the world, you know, if you can buy it right and you can pay it off quickly. And I would suggest that anyone on this call not to finance at 30 years. I think just try to do 15 years if you can, just because 30 years is such a long time. If you look at the amortization schedule on 30 years, you would cry at how much interest you're paying, in my opinion. I would just really just bite the bullet and do 15. So yeah, definitely the best investment.
Philip Way has a question. Raised his hand earlier.
Sorry, somebody was talking.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not very good at talking, but I'll try my best to ask this question. So I understand that for most people that I know paying rent to live in DC or Virginia, whatever, right, their average rent is around $1,800 to $2,100, let's just say. If you purchase a property that's worth $800,000, you found a great deal somewhere, right? Let's say in Columbia Heights. How are you going to find tenants that can occupy your units that can pay your mortgage? I mean, either Carlos or Dr. Joe can answer that question. So,
I'm glad you asked that question. I like the question because you're trying to do what we buy and hold people do, which is, you know what buy and hold real estate investing is, right? You're buying it and you're hanging on to it. You know fundamentally what's going on when you do that? What you're doing is you're getting other people to buy you appreciating assets. You know, I mean, of course, there's some work involved and a lot of paperwork. I need to have my name on the deed, just paperwork. I need to have my name on and my signature on a bunch of loan documents. It's just paperwork. I need to get lease arrangements in place with tenants, more paperwork. But it's sort of weird. Like, who says I'm the one who gets to have the asset purchased for him? The papers do. I'm no better than my tenants? Heck no. I'm just a guy. They're just guys and gals. We're all just people. Yet through this paper arrangement, I've got people buying me. Not a donut, not a cup of coffee, not a suit, not a vacation. I'm going up the ladder. Not a car, but something that actually gains value, unlike all of those things over time, real estate, and is massive. An $800,000 house is 20 times bigger than a $40,000 car. And you don't see people buying me cars, and cars lose value. No, they're buying me an $800,000 house through this paper arrangement. The answer is it's very doable, Philip, especially in the example you called out. Getting a house for $800,000 in Columbia Heights is not as easy as it used to be. That's the hardest part of your question. It can be done, but it's not easy. But it can be done, but it's not easy. But finding tenants to rent rooms from you if you want to house hack your way into Columbia Heights, which is a very good place to consider doing that, if you can wrap your arm around an $800,000, $900,000 Columbia Heights asset, which Seth is telling me you can do with 3 or 4 or 5% down. Well, then if when it comes time to find tenants to house hack it with you and live in there, we can certainly help you do that because, and then this is the model that I'm a little more comfortable in is the young professional group house model. And it's all the same problem. It's why we have those vouchers, and it's why we've got buy and hold investors renting to young professionals. Housing's too expensive, and the marketplace has to come up with solutions. The voucher program is one solution, and for young professionals who maybe can't qualify for the voucher program, it's shack up with a bunch of friends, and don't pay $2,600 to live in a big tower, but maybe pay $1,000 or $1,300 per person to live in a really nice house and have your own room. And certainly the living dining area is going to be much bigger because it's a house now than it would have been in your apartment. But the answer is that it can be done, and that is a thriving submarket. That is a thriving submarket.
And a great segue. I know, Seth, you have to go, but Seth could count what's called border income for some loan products. So again, there's no one size fits all. I'll be sending around Seth's information. Any remaining questions for Seth before he has to jump?
About the asset protection and the loans, like, how these properties like Dr. Joe and others are doing large scale, many properties for rental. How are you protecting
the asset stream is for primary residences only, so it's got to be a property that you're going to buy on your own primary residence, and we're taking that amount of money and we're just turning it into an income stream for qualification purposes. But you could still use rental income on future rental income to qualify. So there are a bunch of different ways, Raj, to do that. And I'm happy to talk. If you think you're somebody that might be in that bucket where you have a lot of assets and you don't have enough regular stated income, then we can certainly talk about that offline. And for that matter, anybody that's got questions or particular questions, I'm available. Nick will have my info, and feel free to reach out. But I just want to thank everybody for having me. Unfortunately, I have to go. And I will see everybody on the next grid call. Dr. Joe, I loved working with your clients, and it's always great to see you. You're a real inspiration, really. So thank you again, Carlos, Nick, everybody. Have a good night.
See you, Seth. Thanks.
See you.
Yeah, the only thing I like to interject, I think we have two scenarios. If you're starting out, you can either pay down the loans of your properties, and which is fine. I would say that it's better to have, this is maybe debatable, it's better to have, instead of paying down all the loans down, acquire more loans, acquire more properties. So you have more geese lay golden eggs. How about that? Okay. So the idea is that if you're in the building stage, you want to acquire multiple properties and have those multiple assets, those multiple geese laying multiple eggs. Okay. So rather than having one goose that's paid off, okay, you have several geese, and you may not get as much cash flow because of the fact that you have loans on the properties, but you have more houses that are working for you, laying more eggs. So over time, you now have several assets as opposed to a few number of assets that are completely paid off. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's what I was, looking back. If I had bought more houses, because most investors who've been around for a long time will tell you three things. One, I wish I started earlier. Okay. I wish I pulled the trigger earlier. Two, I wish I sort of bought more. Okay. And three, I wish I kept more. Those are the three things that tends to play out over time. So my thing is start now, or as soon as you can, buy as many as you can, and hold on to them. And the way you can buy many that you can is by having loans, multiple loans, as opposed to having a bunch of free and clear properties.
it sounded like Jad has a slightly different approach. He was talking about getting 15-year notes, for example. I fall a little bit more into the Dr. Joe camp, where I don't want to owe too little money against my properties. Once I get my mortgage down to the point, let's say, where I owe 60%. So let's say I have $1 million property and I only owe 600. I'd rather owe 700 or 800. That's the way my mind works. So I have a $500,000 property and I only owe 300. I'd rather owe 200, 100 against that $500,000 property. Because if I owe less money, it's true, I'll make more monthly profit. But what I'm very focused on is the longer game. And what I want is to have a bigger asset footprint. So he talks about like laying eggs and just, you know, having geese laying eggs. You could have that many laying these golden eggs, or you could have this many. Now, it's true you're going to be more profitable with less debt against your portfolio, but this goes right back to the question I asked Raj towards the beginning, which is know yourself and what is it you're trying to do. In my case, I'm 56 years old and I'm still trying to grow my portfolio. As I get older, I start thinking a little bit more about having less debt on average against my properties and more equity, because I may stop selling real estate as a realtor. Maybe you're an accountant, maybe you're a nurse, you know, maybe you're a property manager, maybe you work at a bank, whatever your job is, you're getting older, you're thinking about no longer doing it and not making that money. And now maybe I'll start to depend on my real estate portfolio a little bit more heavily for the income, the shorter term golden eggs that it's laying, and less the longer term ones, which is having this big asset base. So maybe Carlos, as he gets older, will start to say to himself he wants a smaller percentage of debt against his portfolio. Or, and this is starting to happen to me, I think, your overall portfolio is big enough that it's throwing off enough profit that even though you're getting older, you can still go with a more aggressive, higher percentage owed against your portfolio, because the overall portfolio is bringing in golden eggs with enough frequency that they may not be as big, smaller profit on average for each property, but it all aggregates up to enough profit. And then you can head into being, you know, a really old man, maybe quite wealthier than you thought you would be, in my case, and willing to keep playing the game and just think about having a larger asset base for the next generation. Maybe people who are your loved ones. In my particular case, I've got specific institutions I want to give money to. Frankly, the older I get, the less I want to give my money to my kids, because the less I believe that it'll help them, and the more I want to give money to other things. But that's the trade-off between having a larger amount of debt against your real estate versus a smaller amount. And from what I'm inferring from Joe, because he's got 30 properties, okay? So I can actually start to imagine numbers associated with Joe. I go, whoa, wow, woo. Ooh. He also probably is in a position where he can stay aggressive if he wants, getting into older age, if that's what he chooses to do, where he could still say, I actually want to see, part of the point of real estate is the leverage. It's unlike other investments. In other words, you're missing out on part of the benefit if you're not maximizing the leverage to some degree. And so Joe and I feel that to our core, and we're maybe a little less worried about having enough income. Joe, certainly by the time you have 30 plus properties, you know, you're getting to the point where even if you continue to get more and more leverage, you're still profiting enough. And then, and Aisha, we'll get to in 1 second, back to the element of time. I promise you, one of the things that enables Joe or Carlos to still put more debt on their portfolio rather than less debt is that meanwhile, rents keep growing. This is back to Joe's point of letting time do its job. So like, you know, in my case, I always tell the story, Nick, so I'm sure tired of hearing it. It's my favorite property because when I bought it, the lower level unit, the rent was $800 and the upper level unit was $900 for a total of $1,700. But today the rents are $3,300 and $3,600. So imagine how willing I might be the, yeah, hell yeah, put more debt on it because I'm going to cover that debt and some because those rents are beyond what I ever imagined I'd be collecting when the deal was good enough for me to do it to begin with. Back in the day when it was 1,700 instead of 6,900, whatever it is.
But Carlos, do you and Dr. Joe have a number that you guys want to get to in net rental income where you're like, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to Florida. I'm going to be in South Beach, or they're like, what is your number? Is there a monthly number that you want to get to where you can just say, bye-bye DC, I'm going to go retire?
Let me answer that question. I was speaking to my mother.
And then we'll go to
She's in England. I gotta answer that question this way. I was speaking to my mother a few years ago, and she was saying, "Why are you doing this? When is enough enough? When is enough enough?" I mean, that's a legit question. When is enough enough? When is Carlos done? When is Janine done? When are you done? And I thought about that because I don't need to buy any more houses. I don't. I have the cash flow I need. But what I realize now is that I'm making a difference in people's lives. Okay. I'm providing housing opportunities for people that would never ever be given the chance, for example. And so, I answer it a different way. It's almost selfish of me to stop because if I don't provide this house to this family, who's going to do it? Is Aisha going to do it? Is Nick going to do it? Is Jad going to do it? If I don't do it, we need, so from my perspective, I enjoy making a difference in other people's lives. That's the reason why I'm doing it. So I'm making money, obviously, but I'm also making a difference in people's lives.
But Dr. Joe, do you have a number? You don't have to tell us what the number is, but did you have a number in mind when you started acquiring your properties? Like, I want to make 20,000 net income. That way I can go to Florida, 20,000 net. I'm happy. I can pay whatever.
I think it's all relative. I mean, everyone's different. I mean, some people it's about the money. Some people it's about the ability to have control over their time. In my case, I was tired of my job, and I wanted the flexibility to control my time, and I was able to achieve that point when my income from my rentals equaled my salary for my job. So that was the driver. And again, everybody's different, and it's not always about the money. It's sometimes about you and what drives you and what's important to you. And maybe you want to spend time doing other things, and you just need the supplemental income just to be able to do that.
So that's interesting. So you did have a number. So your number when you first started was to make enough money to replace your existing W-2.
That was my goal. But looking back, I could have done that earlier. Okay. So, I mean, I'm more of a conservative. I was married. I'm married. I had a child. So, just to quit my job tomorrow was not realistic. Okay. I had to make sure that there was a sufficient income to support the family. And so I waited until my income from my job equaled my income from my rental portfolio. And I was able to hit that milestone in 2006. And that gave me the option if I wanted to continue to stay or to leave. And I decided to leave. But that was mine. But yeah, so that's what it was for me.
I have a number, but the numbers keep changing. And I don't mean that my lifestyle gets bigger, but rather the amount of money I need is going down because I'm deciding that I'm going to work longer. And then the amount of money I have is going up, which is going to enable me to stop working sooner. So those numbers are changing in a good, healthy way in the opposite direction. And then the other thing that's changing is that the rents keep getting better. So if you stay in it for enough, like 10-year periods, Joe's put together 3 of those. He's talking 30 plus years. Soon he'll be on his 4th decade. You're around to catch these gusts of winds where wind where the rents just go up a bit. I mean, that didn't happen overnight. I've had that property for 20 years that went from 1,800 to 6,900 rent roll. That happened over 20 years, but you're around long enough and you get those gusts, you didn't even need it, but it's there, and then that changes the calculation. The last thing I'll say is, in my particular case, and this starts bordering on the spiritual, like what Dr. Joe said, because he's helping families. I'm not particularly helping families with my real estate rentals, because I like rent to young professionals. Many of them are spoiled anyhow, just like I was. But what I'm doing is, with my winnings, I'm doing some certain philanthropic projects. And so, Jad, this may sound crazy to someone like you if you're feeling tired, but the reason I keep working so hard is because I can. Meaning that, my life could have turned out a different way, where I wasn't blessed with being in this position to get to do real estate with Nick and Cindy and David and Jasmine, who's on the call too, and where I didn't have opportunity, and where I didn't have a particular set of philanthropic things that really excite me. But in fact, I do have all of that. And so part of the reason for continuing to work hard is because I'm lucky enough to be able to. And I said that to my mother. Speaking of mothers, Joe, and she was like, she cocked her head and was like, let's talk about that. Like, you're crazy. But I also wanted to get to Aisha and Janine and someone else. Says one more. Who else?
T Mai, I think.
Okay.
And I think she's had her hand up for a long time. She's had a question for a long time. So
okay.
She could go before me.
So my name's Asia Terry. It's good to see everybody. Good to see you, Nick. I appreciate everyone's comments. I've learned a ton. I have a question for Dr. Joe. I actually have 9 rental properties based out of an LLC in North Carolina, which is my home state. But I have the majority of them are North Carolina. And so, Dr. Joe, when you mentioned that you manage your properties yourself and don't have a property management manager, that is so impressive. And for me, that's a struggle because a lot of my properties are in a different state. But I do have family there to help. My question is, in terms of the use of the home warranties to help manage those properties, you have 30 properties, and if I understood you correctly, you said that you have a home warranty policy for each and every one, which in my experience gets quite pricey, actually. At what point do you find that the return on investment, or really it's insurance essentially, is actually not worth it? I know I use American Home Shield, and it could be $60 a month per property for that warranty, which adds up, just for my, 9 properties. And so sometimes I feel like I'm wasting money, to be honest with you, especially if I'm not utilizing the warranty. Any thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. I have home warranties on all my properties. The reason why I do that is I did a cost benefit analysis. Yes, it costs money. It costs anywhere from $40 to $60 a month, as you just said. And I do that I realize that the importance of having happy tenants, and nothing worse for a tenant than something goes wrong, whatever that something is. And you now are scurrying around trying to figure out how to fix that problem, whatever that is. You're trying to call a handyman, a repairman, no one's returning your calls. And likewise, you got an irate tenant. So for example, if you have the heating system go down in the winter time, tenant calls you and they say, Aisha, my heating system is not working, it's cold. Okay, and you're now on the hook now to go find somebody to fix it. Now you may have difficulty finding somebody, and in the meantime, the tenant is getting upset. And if you don't fix it quickly, it could get to the point whereby the tenant escalates all the way up to the city and get them involved. So get third parties involved, okay? So that's an extreme situation. Most of the times, hopefully you'll fix the problem and so on. What I realized is that, no, okay, then Aisha calls me, the heating system is not working. if Aisha knows that I, the landlord, have reached out to the American Home Shield, for example, and they've assigned it to a heating company, and now it's just a matter of them scheduling. The tenants, it may not come, the heating system may not work today or tomorrow, but at least they know I'm working on it. At least they know that I'm not blowing them off. And so I just decided that, you know, if I can outsource those major systems to third parties, then it improves my customer service to my tenants. And they tend to appreciate the fact that I'm trying to solve the problem. Now, what's that worth? I don't know. But what I know what it's if I don't fix it and they get upset with me, they may leave, which may cost me $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So, you know, it's a cost, it's a trade-off, and it's an expense. But I've realized that again, I'm focused on turnover. Because turnover, as I'm sure you know, Aisha, when somebody leaves, it's so expensive. Yeah. And it'll wipe out all the profits that you've made for that year. And that could have been prevented if you had a good relationship with your tenant. And the best way to have that relationship is that if something goes wrong, you fix it, check in with your tenant every so often, make sure that they know that you value them and that, you know, they're a customer, and you know, you want to make sure they're happy. So that's just the philosophy I have, and that's the reason why I do those policies.
Sure. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I actually had one other really quick question. In terms of taxes, any tips on taxes for, you know, your rental properties and for your rental company in general? Obviously, we're coming off of tax season. Yesterday was, like, I think, the deadline, and I personally am becoming more and more familiar with DC's tax laws relative to real estate, specifically like the D20 and the D30, et cetera, these forms. Do you do your own taxes, and any just tips in general in terms of how to maximize, you know, tax returns so that you're not paying a ton in taxes for all of that money you're making?
Well, I mean, I'm not a CPA. I mean, I don't do my own taxes. I have a bookkeeper and it's a CPA that do that all. But you're in a business, which means that a lot of the expenses that you know, that you have can be written off or offset against your income. There's depreciation. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to really negate your tax obligations. If you have a good CPA, there are you know, lots of things that you can do. I mean, although I have a lot of properties, I don't pay as much taxes as a lot of people do. Also, the other thing is that if you have good tenants, okay, you can do more than 9, Aisha. You know, you can do 10, you can do 20, you can do 30. I mean, it sounds like I manage all my properties myself. The reason why I can do that is because I take the time to screen, and I take the time to have what I call tier 1 tenants. That's number one, is to make sure you screen to get the right people. And everybody has a history in terms of tenants. Your job is to find that history. But once they're in your home, then it transitions to customer service, customer relationship management. What can you do to make sure they're happy? Because if they're happy, you know, they're more likely to stay, and they're more likely to not go somewhere else. So yeah, so taxes, yes, if you have a good CPA, but I think that the overall message I want to give is that if you make a mistake on screening, all the things that Carlos is talking about, all the things that I'm talking about becomes meaningless. Because I don't know if you've ever had a tenant from hell. If you have, then I could be talking all day long about buying, holding forever. You're saying, no, I'm done, I'm out, you know. You know, so the screening is the part I think a lot of people minimize. But if you screen well, then it really is a joy, because you have great tenants and who are less drama and less stress, and then you can now start building your portfolio. You can start having these golden geese, which will help you get financial independence.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ask my wife right now to buy another rental property. I'm not taking no as an answer.
Make sure you screen well though.
What did we get to everyone's questions? Didn't
T Mai still
Tia
had her
Mai.
hand raised.
I'm sorry, I didn't know my name was not up there. It was Tracy. I have two questions. One, I'm curious as to why Dr. Joe doesn't invest in multi-unit properties. Two, what would I need to do to quickly get started? Because like I said, I have a company that I have had for the retail, and I'm not making any money doing anything right now. But I also have an SBA loan that I have to start paying soon. So I want to start making some money. So like, what would I need to do to literally put something in action?
Okay. You want me to start up? That question is to me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why don't I do multifamily? There are lots of different niches, and I just decided that I know single families. You know, it's an asset class where if I want to sell, it's very easy to sell. I tend to rent to families. Families tend to be a lot more stable. They tend to stay there longer. It's very easy to rent, and I'm comfortable with that. It's the devil you know sometimes better than the devil you don't know. The grass is always green on the other side. People always tell me, why do you get into multifamily? There's a lot of money to be made in multifamily, but I've just decided that this is the niche I want to focus on, and I've taken the time to understand how that niche works, and I've made it work for me. So, but that's not to say you shouldn't do multifamily. It's just that I've chosen to do single family. So that's the first part. In terms of getting started right now, there's different ways. I think that first thing you have to do is take time to understand yourself, what your strengths, what your weaknesses, what are you good at, get the buy-in from your spouse, take the time to, next thing is to sort of decide on the area of focus that you want to do. If you want to be geographical focus, if you want to be an asset class focus, decide what works for you based on your level of risk and the finances that you have available. Third thing would be learn the basics of that. You don't need to learn everything about it. Just learn the basics. But the more important thing is to find somebody who's successfully doing what it is that you want to do. Whatever that is, there's somebody out there who's crushing it. You need to find those persons, and then work with them, leverage their expertise, leverage their experience, and then pull the trigger, make it happen. At some point, you do have to buy. Which means that you got to have the finances in place. You got to have, systems in place, a network in place. But that's where the person's experience will help you because they already have all those things, and you can leverage from them. But at some point, you do have to pull the trigger, and because otherwise, you won't do anything. You'll be paralysis analysis. You'll be waiting for all the stars to align, and they never will align. You just have to do it, and then you learn. And you make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes, and then you can continue, and then you go on, and then you go on, and then you go on. There's a lot that I throw out there.
One thing I'll throw out is that don't overcomplicate things. A lot of investors assume that an investment property looks a certain way, like a multi-unit building, but like I always say to my little brother, just buy houses. Just buy houses. That could mean multi if that floats your boat. The other thing is, if you're going to buy over five units or greater, then you have to use more sophisticated financing. But if you're going to buy a 4-unit or under, then you can use the more easily obtained, better terms financing with lower rates, fixed rates, better terms. So what I do like about a 4-unit is that you can move into it as your personal residence, put maybe 3.5% down with an FHA loan, only 3.5 down, and manage to buy a home that is 3/4 investment. So I like the proportionality of that as an investment strategy that's low cost on the front end because it's minimum down payment. But apart from that aspect of it, I personally am no longer obsessed with multi-units, although I was when I first started. And my first home was a 4-unit, and it got me rolling, and I thank God for that. But now I just buy houses. Am I open to buying a 4-unit? Sure. If it's a single family, sure. Just buy houses. Just keep buying houses if you can. And of course, it's going to be a lot easier if you can do it through your primary residence purchase. FHA, 3.5% down. So little money. Using the leverage is the key, and doing it through your primary is the easiest way to do it. Because like right now, I can no longer get the lenders to believe me that I'm going to move into it. Like they're like, no, we recognize your pattern at this point, Garcia. And so 20-25% is what I need from you. And you know, that's a lot of money. So I sometimes I think back to when I was my life was structured so that I could buy with 3, 5, 6, 10% down, and how beautiful that was. But those days are no longer available to me. But they might be to you, especially if you can make the case in front of a lender.
I have a question, if that's okay.
You've been patient.
Oh, no problem. Dr. Jill knows that I ask a lot of questions, and he should be proud of me. I didn't ask a lot today. So in the fast-paced market where like homes are just flying so quickly, what would you say about hard money versus traditional lending? Would you veer toward one or the other? And this can be for Dr. Joe or Carlos, doesn't matter.
What kind of an acquisition?
Well, I haven't, wait, time out. I haven't heard this saying in a while, Carlos, and I wonder if you're going to say it.
So this is for an investment property to answer this question.
Okay.
A buy and hold, you mean?
For buy and hold, yeah.
Oh, tell me, Nick.
Yeah, buy as many houses possible on the best terms as possible.
That's true.
And I think Dr. Joe would say the same. If you could get the house using a conventional or commercial loan, you know, get that. You know, if you have to go for the higher, less lucrative or the higher interest rates, do that. But buy as much real estate using the best, getting the best rate under the best terms possible, and that's usually the rate price.
Yeah, there are 4 cost centers, Janine. There's a cost of acquisition. Obviously, if you can reduce the acquisition price, you're great. There's a cost of finance. If you can reduce your financing costs, then obviously you're going to make a greater profit. Then if you're going to do some renovations, there's another cost center, the cost of renovations and holding. And then you got the cost of the exit, the sale. So if you can reduce those, any of those areas, if you can reduce the cost of those, then you're more likely to increase your likely profit. So if you can drive down the cost of financing, then you'll also increase your profits. But you get financing based on what you can get. If you can't get commercial, residential Fannie Mae type financing, then you can't get it. Then, you know, you have to go with the next thing, which may be hard money, but at least it gets you in, you know, and so it gets you into the game. I wouldn't recommend hard money for permanent financing. It's more of a short-term financing. And then once you've kind of got in, then you can then look to other forms of financing, which may be cheaper, which are also likely to get you a cash flow that you need. But the important thing is you get what you can get at the cheapest that you can get it for, and you start from there. I think that's what Nick is saying, and I agree with that. But I wouldn't not start because you can't get 30-year 3% financing. Therefore, I'm not doing anything.
Well, the question is more so timing. So like Seth was talking earlier about the bridge loans, not having appraisals, being able to close in 14 days. But like some of the regular financing processes, it may take you 21 days. And I guess I guess maybe I can answer my own question and say, you know, what's meant for you is meant for you, and you'll have it when you're meant to have it. And so if you lose out on a particular deal because it takes, you know, this particular lender, they can't close with you in 21 days. This other person can close quicker than you, then it just maybe wasn't meant for you to have. So I guess you could go either, you can go a spiritual side with it, or you can go like a general side with it.
Well, I mean, just because I don't always buy into, well, if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. Well, you know, therefore you never do anything. You make it meant to be. And there are things that you can do to make your offer attractive. So in the meantime, you can look to different lenders and, you know, whether it's, you know, you spend time with Seth and see what programs are out there that he has that works for you. And, you know, if it's not program A, it could be program B or C or whatever it is, but you work with him such that you can get the financing, such that when you make the offer through Carlos or Nick, then you've got your financing in place. And then you make your offer as attractive as possible. Therefore, you increase the chance of you getting, because sometimes it's not always about the highest price. It's just sometimes it's how the contract is written. And but you do need to make sure that your offer is attractive in order to get the deals in this sort of competitive market.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is that it's true that, you know, you're going to pay a little bit of a premium in some of those cost centers for the hard money. And often the hard money is not designed to be in place for a long time. So you're going to be paying points and costs and stuff, and you may have to get out of it and fundamentally refinance. So probably it has a lot to do with just how good the opportunity is. If the opportunity is good enough, then maybe it's worth paying that premium to get into it. Because Joe's saying get into it. Get into it.
Yeah. First things first.
Yeah,
you know, buy as many houses as possible was your first line, at the best terms as possible. So it's not an and or statement. It's first things first. And
yep.
yeah. And the cool thing about hard money is it's so convenient, right? So we're not looking at locking in the term. So it's maybe a little bit of a, you know, they're not synonymous, or they're not mutually exclusive, actually. You could buy houses with bad terms and then just refinance it out of them. But with buy holds, I guess it depends if you're doing a value add or just like, you know, move-in ready rental.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Well, our main host, Nikki, is on the move, and if he's got to go to dinner, then so do I. How's everyone feeling? All right. Did we miss any questions before we wrap up? I'll just say one last thing about Dr. Joe. Excuse me for sounding a little cynical, but there's like a lot of BS, especially like in cable TV. Maybe it's on the internet by now. When I was coming up, it was always on cable TV, where people are trying to sell you these like get rich quick schemes right. in real estate in particular. There are other ones too, but in real estate. And let me just be very clear. Dr. Joe is a man of integrity and substance and has some very practical ideas. And actually, it's not get rich quick with Dr. Joe. It's get rich slow. You know, he's going to show you how to do it and do it in a systematic fashion. So I'm not, you know, paid to advertise Dr. Joe, but he does have a program, and he can make a heck of a lot more money doing the deals himself than teaching people how to do them. But like you've heard him say, he's opened his heart to you. He enjoys turning other people onto this, and that is something I can relate to: the ability to help people invest in real estate and create intergenerational wealth, right? So I highly recommend that if I know there's some people who are already students of Dr. Joe, if you're not already one, please, you know, consider what he can offer you, because I think you'll gain great insight, and you'll get to hang out with somebody who, again, has integrity and insights. So it's all good stuff.
I'll just say, as a former student, I too am not paid to advertise for him, but he does provide excellent quality content, and it's one of the reasons that I've left I'm moving away from the paralysis stage to really take steps to do what I need to do. He's very liberal with his time during the courses, so it's not like, okay, you're paying for this, we start at this time and we're only ending at this time. It goes as long as there are questions and content to share for that particular time. So for anyone that's still left on the call that is looking for information and help to get them revved up and started, I honestly would say his course is one of the best places to start.
That was
And he did not pay me. He did not know I was going to say that. Like, none of that. He teases me all the time.
Free house for you. Free house for you.
I did not say pay anybody. I do not pay anybody, but I've done this for over 30 years. I have a pretty good idea what works, what doesn't work. And I want to encourage more people to do what I'm doing. It works. It works. Okay. It's time tested. And nothing brings me more joy than to see other people replicate what I do. If I can do whatever I can to help you on your journey, it's great. I'll just say this. On Saturday, I just gave a house, rented it to a family, and you need to, I'll show the video. I mean, there was cries, there were people crying, tears, joy, and so on. I had 6 applications. I had to turn down 5 people. Nothing would give me better joy than to say, look, I'm sorry, my house is full, but go to Carlos, go to Janine, go to Nick, go to TMI, go to whoever, okay? Because they got a property, which they're also looking for quality tenants. And so that's what I want to do, is to be able to help you get financially independent, make money, but also make a difference in other people's lives as well.
You're here. Good stuff.
Yeah. If you want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me either on, go to the website, go to social media, or shoot me an email. Probably shoot me an email, and then we'll take it from there.
All righty. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
All right. See you next month.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
All right. Bye, guys.